South Africa, we are not the enemies. But somewhere along the way, many of us started believing we were. The Nigerian became the criminal, the South African became the xenophobe. And two nations that should be beacons of hope for Africa began looking at each other with suspicion instead of solidarity. But here's the question: who benefits when Africans begin seeing other Africans as the enemy? Because if we are honest, the people destroying Africa were never ordinary Nigerians, and they were never ordinary South Africans. So today, let's have the conversation most people are too emotional to have. Not as Nigerians, not as South Africans, but as Africans. Because the future of this continent may depend on it. A few weeks ago, I released a documentary titled "What South Africa Exposed About Nigeria." Many Nigerians were shocked. Some were offended. Others thanked me, for saying what many people were afraid to say. But something else happened. Thousands of South Africans watched that documentary on this channel too. Many appreciated the honesty. Some disagreed, and some walked away, believing that every stereotype about Nigeria must be true. And that is why this conversation became necessary. Because exposing a problem should never become an excuse to condemn an entire people. So let me be absolutely clear. If a Nigerian commits a crime in South Africa, arrest him. If he breaks your laws, prosecute him. If he harms innocent people, let justice take its course. No honest Nigerian should defend criminality. Criminal behavior is criminal behavior, no matter who commits it, no matter where they come from. But here is where we must draw the line. Criminals are individuals. Nations are not. When one Nigerian commits fraud, he should answer for his actions. Not the nurse working honestly in Johannesburg, not the engineer contributing to the economy, not the student studying for a better future, not the entrepreneur creating jobs, not the millions of Nigerians who simply want to earn a honest living and return home safely to their families. The same principles applies everywhere. If a South African commits a crime in Nigeria, that doesn't make every South African a criminal, because justice judges individuals, but prejudice judges groups. And those two things are not the same. You see that? But one of the easiest things to do when life becomes difficult is to find someone else to blame. And history has shown us this over and over again. Whenever economies struggle, whenever unemployment rises, whenever people begin to lose hope, someone always becomes the convenient target. Sometimes it's immigrants, sometimes it's another tribe, sometimes it's another religion, sometimes it's another country. The faces change, but the pattern doesn't. And before you know it, ordinary people begin fighting each other, while the real problem remains exactly where they were. And that brings me to a difficult question. How did Nigeria and South Africa, two of Africa's most influential nations, reach a point where suspicion became easier than understanding? How did countries that should be collaborating end up constantly chasing each other? Like, how in the world did brothers become rivals? Was it because we are naturally different? Or because we have spent too many years allowing frustration to become hatred? Think about it. An unemployed young man in Lagos wants opportunity. An unemployed young man in Johannesburg wants exactly the same thing. A mother in Abuja worries about feeding her children. A mother in Cape Town worries about feeding hers too. A graduate in Port Harcourt searches endlessly for work. A graduate in Durban does too. different countries, remarkably similar struggles. And yet, instead of recognizing our shared challenges, we often see each other as competitors, as threats, as enemies. But are we really? Or have we simply become easier to divide than unite? Because when ordinary Africans are busy fighting ordinary Africans, the deeper issues escape scrutiny: the corruption, the inequality, the failing institutions, the broken systems. Those problems don't disappear. They simply move out of the spotlight. While citizens argue with one another, the people responsible for fixing those problems face less pressure to do so. That is a pattern we should all be paying attention to. So today, I am not here to defend everything Nigerians do. Far from it. In the next part of this conversation, I am going to speak directly to Nigerians. Because if we expect fairness from others, we must also be willing to confront uncomfortable truth about ourselves. Truth, after all, begins at home. So let me begin with my fellow Nigerians. Because before we ask anyone else to look in the mirror, we must be willing to look at it ourselves. The truth is, some Nigerians have damaged our image around the world. That is not propaganda. It is not self-hatred either. It is reality. There are Nigerians who have committed fraud. There are Nigerians involved in drug trafficking. There are Nigerians who exploit others. There are Nigerians who have broken the trust of the very communities that welcome them. Yeah. And every time that happens, every honest Nigerian pays a price. The businessman who did nothing wrong must work twice as hard to earn trust. The student is viewed with suspicion. The professional has to prove that they deserve to be in the room. The innocent carries the weight of the guilty. That is unfair, but it's also real. Which is why I believe every Nigerian has a responsibility, not just to build a better Nigeria at home, but to represent Nigeria with dignity wherever we find ourselves. Because whether we like it or not, people judge countries through the citizens they meet. That shouldn't happen, but it does. So if you're a Nigerian living abroad, remember this. You may be the only Nigerian someone will ever know personally. The way you speak, the way you walk, the way you treat people, the way you keep your word, those things matter. You don't just carry your luggage, you carry a country's reputation. Having said all of that, let's ask another difficult question. If one Nigerian commits a crime, does that make over 200 million Nigerians criminals? Of course not. Just as one corrupt politician doesn't represent every South African, just as one violent individual doesn't define an entire nation. Justice is personal, prejudice is collective, and confusing the two has caused unimaginable pain throughout history. Now let me speak directly to my South African brothers and sisters. I understand the frustration. I understand what unemployment feels like. I understand the fear of not knowing where your next opportunity will come from. Trust me, I understand. I also understand what it means to feel that your country is not working the way it should. Believe me, I do. Nigerians understand that feeling too. But here's what I ask you. Don't allow frustration to become hatred. Because once people stop seeing human beings and start seeing labels, compassion disappears. Today, it is the Nigerians. Tomorrow, it could be another nationality, or another tribe, or another community. History has shown us that prejudice rarely stops where it starts. And let me also say this. Most South Africans are not violent. Trust me, I've seen a whole lot of them. Most South Africans are very hardworking people. Parents, students, business owners, workers trying to build a life, just like most Nigerians. The problem is that the loudest voices often become the face of an entire nation. A few acts of violence can make the whole world believe that every South African is xenophobic, just as the crime of a few Nigerians can make the world believe every Nigerian is a criminal. Both conclusions are false, both are unfair, and both keep us trapped in a cycle of suspicion. Imagine for a moment what could happen if Nigerians and South Africans choose cooperation over hostility. Imagine our entrepreneurs building businesses together, our universities exchanging ideas, our young people creating technology together, our artists telling African stories together, our markets trading more, our people traveling without fear. Imagine an Africa where our biggest nations inspire one another instead of accusing one another. That is not a fantasy. It's a choice. But it begins with something simple: seeing each other as people first and passport second. So that brings us to perhaps the most important question of all. Who really benefits when Nigerians and South Africans see each other as enemies? Think about it. When a Nigerian spends all day arguing with a South African online, who wins? When a South African blames every foreigner for the country's problems, who wins? When fear replaces dialogue, when anger replaces understanding, when suspicion replaces trust, who actually benefits? Certainly not a young graduate looking for a job. Certainly not a young business owner trying to survive. Certainly not the parent struggling to provide for a family. And certainly not Africa. The truth is, a divided Africa is a weaker Africa. Every hour we spend fighting one another is an hour we are not building together. Every opportunity we lose because of distrust is an opportunity another part of the world is ready to seize, while we argue over who belongs. Others are investing, innovating, building, competing, moving forward. Meanwhile, we remain distracted, not because Africans lack intelligence, not because Africans lack talent, but because division has become one of our greatest weaknesses. Now, let me speak directly to South Africa, not as a Nigerian, not as someone trying to win an argument either, but simply as an African. South Africa, we admire your resilience, we admire your history, we honor the sacrifices we made to overcome apartheid. That struggle inspired millions across this continent, including Nigerians who stood with you in different ways during those difficult years. Our histories are connected, and our future will be connected, whether we like it or not. So here's my appeal: judge us fairly, not by our passports, not by headlines, not by viral videos. Judge us by our character. Judge us by our actions. Judge us as individuals. That is all any human being can reasonably ask. And now, to my fellow Nigerians, this message is also for us. If we want respect, we must live respectably. If we want trust, we must become trustworthy. If we want to change the way the world sees Nigeria, that change doesn't begin in government offices alone. It begins with us, with our honesty, our discipline, our integrity, our compassion. That passport you carry should never become an excuse for bad behavior. Instead, let it become a reminder that every interaction you have shapes someone's perception of an entire nation. carry Nigeria well, not because the world expects perfection, but because our children deserve a better reputation than the ones we inherited. And finally, to every African watching this, whether you are a Nigerian, South African, Kenyan, Ghanaian, Congolese, Ugandan, or from any other country of this beautiful continent, never forget this truth. The borders that divide us were drawn on maps, but our future will be built on people who choose cooperation over conflict, truth over propaganda, justice over prejudice, character over stereotypes, and hope over hatred. Because no country becomes stronger by teaching its people to hate another African nation. And no continent becomes great when its children sees one another as enemies. South Africa, we are not your enemies. We never were. We are your fellow Africans. We are your neighbors. And if Africans is ever going to become everything we have the potential to be, then one day Nigerians and South Africans will have to stop asking who is to blame and start asking how do we build together. Because that is the conversation our generation cannot afford to avoid. Thank you for watching. If this message challenged you, don't just share it with someone who agrees with you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that brings us closest together. God bless Nigeria. God bless South Africa. And God bless Africa. This is Xenophobia. And this is the Royal Africa. I'll be back.